The Cure have played maybe 3 times in the last 15 years, and Simon, our bassist, wasn't with us for the first time. Robert Smith is more than just the Cure's frontman, with his tangled hair, black-rimmed eyes, and dreamlike voice. He's a lost generation soul. Boy Don't Cry, Love Song, and Disintegration are the music for souls that never fit in this noisy world. Over 30 million records have been sold worldwide, and 65,000 people cried at the Cure's 40th anniversary event in Hyde Park in 2018. While the world names him the Goth King, the pioneer of post-punk and alternative rock, Robert Smith lives peacefully, without scandal, children, or noise, as if celebrity was never his objective. An artist who was expelled from high school for being too prominent, fought backstage during a European tour, and was misunderstood for a racist due to a song title. However, he has been with his first love for over 50 years. He remains on stage at 70 despite others leaving the Cure. Robert Smith's life is a melancholy melody, deep, foggy, silent, and lovely in a way no spotlight can portray. Why did a beaten teen become a global cultural icon? What's behind the smudged lipstick, untamed hair, and dreamy stare? Watch Early Life to discover out. In 1959, Robert Smith was born in Blackpool, but his upbringing was never settled. His family traveled frequently from Blackpool to Horley before landing in Crawley, West Sussex, the Cure's first birthplace. Robert was a timid youngster who hid in his room and spun vinyl records in modest houses with long hallways and rainy southern English afternoons, letting music separate him from reality. He wasn't destitute, but neither was his family wealthy. His father, Alex Smith, was a Navy veteran with a rich voice. Without realizing it, he taught Robert the first tunes by singing to his children at night. Rita, his pianist mother, believed music was the only way to help her children discover themselves in an increasingly apathetic society. No parent forced their kids to do anything, but they encouraged them to play and sing if it made them happy. Third of 4 siblings, Robert? He wasn't the family star. His sister Janet, the piano prodigy, had been taught music by their mother since childhood. Janet accidentally steered Robert in another way. He started playing guitar to stand out and have a voice. Since my sister was too excellent, I had to choose another road. I selected the guitar, which can shout without speaking. Robert's scholastic years were replete with norm-breaking. He was assaulted after class for wearing a black velvet skirt to school, a 1970s deviation. Although teachers dubbed it a rebellion, his classmates treated him like an outcast who deserved punishment. Those events didn't change Robert. They led him to withdraw, become more guarded, and turn to music as his only refuge. Robert and his band Malice, the predecessor to The Cure, performed at St. Wilfrid's Comprehensive's Christmas Gala in 1976. Show success exceeded expectations. The authorities suspended him because he was a bad influence on other students. He was expelled from a school that instructed youth to be themselves. Instead of giving up, Robert wrote his first tunes. I play by ear, not sight. I write alone. The way society treated him like an odd child and his family's silent, non-judgmental support made Robert Smith a quintessential outsider who was strong enough to turn his darkness into music that resonated around the world in his early career. After being suspended for performing with Malice in 1976, Robert Smith never returned to school. Music was his only option, not because it was predetermined. Robert established Easy Cure with boyhood pals Lol Tolhurst, Michael Dempsey, and Porel Thompson, a post-punk and French philosophy-influenced rock band with frigid tones and experimental textures. The name was simplified to The Cure, a simple but meaningful title. Music heals loneliness, pain, and loss. The Cure joined with Fiction Records in 1978, and at 19, Robert was the band's creative leader, lead vocalist, and visual identity designer. From their debut track, Killing an Arab, The Cure caused controversy. Inspired by Albert Camus' The Stranger, the song pondered violence's absurdity and meaninglessness. Its title was easily misinterpreted. Robert Smith clarified for years that the song was never racist. If I had realized it would be misconstrued, I would have titled it differently. The most honest things are occasionally misinterpreted. Three Imaginary Boys, their 1979 debut album, was a mix of monotony, irony, and emptiness. Robert's chilly guitar and faraway voice conveyed all. That was just the start. Robert led the Remedy farther into the shadows of the human psyche with 17 Seconds, 1980, Faith, 1981, and Pornography, 1982, where sadness needed no explanation and death and meaninglessness seemed inevitable. Pornography was a nightmare album. Robert plunged into depression during sessions. The band teetered between genius and disaster, sliding into booze, drugs, and inward hatred, he said. The 1982 tour concluded punctually. The band split after Robert Smith and Simon Gallup fought backstage in Strasbourg. Their friendship was shattered by disagreement and insomnia. After 3 albums, The Cure seemed done. Despite the debris, Robert kept playing music. After playing guitar for Susie and the Banshees, he founded The Glove with Steven Severin. These distractions helped him recuperate mentally and enlarge his creative perspective, which allowed The Cure emerge from their shadow. In 1983, Robert returned to The Cure alone, weary, but clear-headed, no longer an introspective guitarist, a musician who survived his songs. He was preparing to write his best career chapters from that debris. Career breakthrough in 1984, Robert Smith returned to The Cure alone amid earlier losses. After losing friends and bandmates, the group's image was shattered. He kept on, gathering each broken piece to make a new treatment. Bolder, emotionally richer, and wide enough to hold all his unspoken agony. Head on Door, 1985, was the first turning point. The customary melancholy persisted, but Robert's music sounded wonderful for the first time. With its upbeat melody and melancholy lyrics, In Between Days made suffering danceable. International performances and charting beyond the Gothic underground brought the band U.S. prominence. Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. 1987, a daring, sweeping double album with diverse styles, was amazing. From funk to ballad, screeching guitars to whispery vocals, Robert created a sonic feast as wild as his emotions. The album made The Cure famous worldwide. Just Like Heaven was a hit song about love and sorrow with a wonderful sound that sounded like falling apart and soaring. A masterpiece just began. Robert published Disintegration in 1989, an album he wrote at 29 while feeling like time was catching up to him. He said he wrote this record as a farewell since he imagined he'd die at 30. Disintegration was a voyage, not a songbook. From Pictures of You's lonely solitude to Plainsong's nebulous sadness to Love Song's throbbing love. The album peaked on Billboard, sold over 3 million copies, and remains one of the most full expressions of love, death, and ego breakdown in contemporary music. Robert Smith and The Cure peaked in 1989 to 1992. Robert's Prayer Tour sold out globally, making him a pop icon. The gothic rock face, shown on MTV and Rolling Stone, is known by all demographics. Unfortunately, Robert retreated more as he got more prosperous. He didn't buy homes, chase fame, or brand The Cure. In the early 1990s, Robert Smith maintained one principle in a commercialized rock world. He only wrote music when he had something real to express, thus it always touched the audience deeply. Personal life: Robert Smith has always stood out in a rock world full of mayhem, short relationships, endless scandals, and endless parties. He was always a man of one woman. Since 1972, Robert met Mary Poole at St. Wilfrid School in Crawley at 13. They didn't love right away. Friends first, they met throughout childhood. Mary stood patiently, without judgment, while Robert's band changed lineups. He was suspended from school, and he was pummeled for wearing a velvet skirt. They married in 1988 after being together since 1976, the year the treatment was discovered. They didn't have children because they didn't want to. Robert added, "I can't imagine having a child while I'm still figuring out how to survive." He loved Mary in all he wrote. For her, The Cure wrote Love Song, their most exquisite love ballad, an eternal vow made on infinite travels. There were no adultery scandals, no celebrity-induced divorces, no regrets after wild nights, just a man who always came home to the woman who listened to him play guitar at 15. Still, love didn't lighten Robert Smith's life. Nameless depressions, anxiety, insomnia, and feeling like an outsider have plagued him. He sometimes disappeared from public view, appearing only in studios or on stage, where he could yell without being asked. Never liked the spotlight, Robert. He just stood because music commanded it. His true passion was always hidden. Mary, Quiet Room, Late Night Tea, and Incomplete Drafts. Mary has remained constant over The Cure's journey. The reason Robert Smith never drowned in his inner storms was that he always had a person to return to. Misunderstandings, conflict, and turbulence. The Cure is one of the few bands to survive over 50 years without drugs, arrests, or sex scandals. However, Robert Smith's path was not without difficulties. His silence and refusal to publicly explain himself contributed to misunderstandings and misjudgments. The first conflict came from within the band. Robert Smith and bassist Simon Gallup fought backstage in Strasbourg in 1982 during a pornography tour. Setlist and sound levels weren't the only issues in the fight. It was the result of months of psychological tension, demanding schedules, and two creative egos clashing. The Cure nearly failed. The band was silent for a year after Robert quit. Lowell Tolhurst, another old acquaintance, caused the second rupture. Robert's boyhood friend, band co-founder, keyboardist, and drummer. After dissolution, Robert had to painfully fire Tolhurst due to his developing drinking, which was affecting their performance and work atmosphere. The decision hurt terribly. Robert knew better than anyone how terrible it was to lose a childhood friend. But he had to choose between past allegiance and band survival. Not all collisions were internal. Their 1978 debut hit, Killing an Arab, gave Robert Smith a label he never wanted. The song, inspired by Albert Camus' The Stranger, was a philosophical allegory for human foolishness, but its title was misunderstood as racist in a politically sensitive environment. Even worse, extremists misquoted it. After receiving criticism, Robert issued formal declarations rejecting any connection to hate ideologies and added disclaimers to further releases clarifying the song's literary roots. "I would have labeled it differently if I knew," he claimed. "I never wrote music to hurt anyone," apologizing late. Robert continues to divide reviewers years later. Some say he was odd for attention, claiming the black clothes, smudged lipstick, and wild hair were marketing strategies, but they forget. Before contracts, stages, or fame, Robert Smith looked like that at 16. It was his nature, not a tactic. In Mark Hoppus's memoir, Blink-182, he joked about Robert Smith trying to kiss me at an after-party after their 2004 Wembley gig. Despite its lightheartedness, the story made headlines. Robert didn't reply. He may be too used to being spoken about without knowing him. Robert Smith has been at the center of confrontations for over 4 decades because he's an artist who won't bend to appease the mob. He'd rather quarrel with his best friend, lose a record deal, or be misunderstood than change who he is. Maybe that's why he's still here, under the stage lights, with his guitar and songs that have never stopped haunting listeners. Legacy and influence. Robert Smith immortalized Gothic rock, not invented it. Robert redefined music that didn't need screams or darkness to be dramatic or frigid with smudged lipstick, a distant stare, and gloomy tunes. He never claimed to represent a movement, but a generation of black-clad teens scribbled diaries with disintegration lyrics and looked to The Cure as the one friend who listened. Robert Smith's influence beyond Gothic rock. He was an example of an artist who was emotionally honest and didn't require controversies or rebellion to be acknowledged. Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails, Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins, Placebo, Interpol, and Billie Eilish all draw influence from Robert's music and energy. More importantly, Robert changed how musicians saw songwriting as a self-healing process rather than a product. He remarked, "Music isn't for sale. Music keeps me from vanishing." When asked if he was enthusiastic about The Cure's 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, Robert replied with a deadpan, "Not as much as you do." Because it accurately portrayed Robert, the biting answer went viral. No act, no fake. Robert Smith was a pop culture icon visually. In the 80s and 90s, his face featured on t-shirts, posters, tattoos, and magazine covers. His look was previously criticized in the fashion industry, but today it symbolizes anti-conformity and quiet. His musical legacy includes tens of millions of albums sold and the survival of souls who thought they were alone. Pictures of You, Deepwater and Lullaby. As You, people saw themselves, unidentified memories, and unanswered questions. No genre, trends, or technique matter when audiences sing along with him in Twilight concerts. They sing because those songs kept them together in hard times. So calling Robert Smith a musician isn't enough. He writes lyrics for the voiceless and proves you can be different and loved. A reminder that you can create beauty even with grief. Present life. Robert Smith is 65. His once wildly tousled hair is now gray and thin, but he keeps it. A gentle reminder that he never gave up on who he is. He still wears big coats and scuffed shoes, but his glance is altered. He's quieter and more contemplative, as if he's seen, heard, and comprehended enough. After 16 years, The Cure released Songs of a Lost World in 2024, a new album full of nostalgia, loneliness, and unsolved questions. Album reviews were positive. Fans accepted it as a gift since it was real, not viral. Robert's music feels like a handwritten journal with smudged writing in an age of algorithm-driven celebrity and edited photos. Never polished for show. Robert hinted to retiring in 2029, The Cure's 50th anniversary. However, that goodbye won't be loud. No goodbye tour or big press release. Probably a small stage, some old songs, and a guitar echoing under dimming lights. He's almost undetectable outside music. No social media, reality TV, or nostalgia podcasts. He lives in an ancient Sussex house with his wife, Mary, the only woman he's publicly loved. They have animals, garden, and Robert writes occasionally. No, to keep the bits of himself he's never given up. Many consider Robert Smith an icon. He may not have sought to be anything to himself. He is a lonely, honest, quiet, devoted man who expressed his anguish via music. So, he saved millions. Not all artists survive to see their music endure. Robert Smith did via sincerity, not plan. Maybe he doesn't need a goodbye after all this. Because whether someone plays Love Song, disintegration, or a forest, Robert is in the notes. Amid the shadows, and those who felt unwanted, Robert Smith will always be remembered for his iconic songs and for being loyal to himself for nearly 50 years in a world that never stopped shouting. A man of stillness, constancy, tenderness, and depth who turned loneliness into art and gave millions of lost souls sanctuary in darkness. He became great without noise. Besides music, Robert Smith leaves empathy, loyalty, and proof that you can be yourself and yet be loved. Your thoughts on Robert Smith's emotional journey? Which song of his sticks with you? Comment below, since every music memory is part of this story. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to be updated on our next voyage as we share genuine stories about real individuals who lived, hurt, and left something remarkable. Thanks for watching. See you next video. Goodbye.